Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSV Redemption, watching the stars streak past through the main view screen. The prison transport ship was 3 days into what should have been a routine 5-day journey to Titan Station. Behind him, the soft hum of computer systems mixed with the quiet conversations of his crew. "Navigation status, Nick," Jake called to his navigation officer. Nick Rodriguez looked up from his console, brushing dark hair from his eyes. "All systems green, Captain. We're on schedule to reach Titan Station in 42 hours. Jake nodded and walked over to where Chief Engineer Lisa Carter was checking system reports on her tablet. Lisa was one of the best engineers in the fleet, though she had a habit of worrying about every small detail. "How are our guests behaving today?" Jake asked. "Quiet," replied Security Chief Danny Walsh from his station. Danny was a big man with careful eyes who had been running prison transports for 8 years. "Too quiet, if you ask me. Makes me nervous when they're not causing trouble." The Redemption carried 847 prisoners in its secure lower decks. Most were heading to the mining colonies for hard labor sentences. A few were dangerous enough to warrant maximum security cells. Jake tried not to think about what crimes they had committed. His job was simple: get them safely to their destination. "Captain," Nick called out, frowning at his displays. "I'm getting some strange readings from the navigation array." Jake walked over to Nick's station. The young officer was one of the best navigators Jake had ever worked with, but he looked confused now. "What kind of strange readings?" "The stellar positioning data doesn't match our expected location. According to this, we should be seeing different star patterns." Nick tapped his screen. "It's like we've drifted off course, but our engines show we've been flying straight." Lisa looked up from her tablet. "That's impossible. The computer systems would have alerted us to any course changes." "Run a full diagnostic on the navigation systems," Jake ordered, "and check our position against the backup sensors." As Nick worked, alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed on every console. Jake felt his stomach drop as he recognized the pattern. "Emergency drop from hyperspace in 10 seconds, the computer announced in its calm voice. "What?" Danny stood up from his chair. "Why are we dropping out of hyperspace?" "I don't know," Nick said, his fingers flying over his controls. "The navigation system just triggered an emergency stop protocol." Jake grabbed the nearest handrail as the ship shuddered violently. The stars outside stopped streaking and became steady points of light. But something was wrong. The space around them looked strange, like the stars were bending at the edges of his vision. "Position report," Jake demanded. Nick's face went pale as he read his instruments. "Captain, this can't be right. According to our sensors, we're in the Kepler 442 system." "That's impossible," Lisa said. "We weren't supposed to go anywhere near that system. It's been marked as a navigation hazard for 20 years. Jake felt cold fear creeping up his spine. The Kepler 442 system was avoided by all ships because of the massive gravitational anomalies there. No one knew exactly what caused them, but several ships had been lost trying to investigate. "Full sensor sweep," Jake ordered. "I want to know exactly where we are and what's out there." The bridge fell silent except for the beeping of computers running scans. Jake watched his crew work, noting the tension in their movements. Lisa was biting her lower lip, something she only did when she was really worried. "Captain," Nick said quietly, "you need to see this." Jake looked at the main screen as Nick transferred his sensor data. What he saw made his blood freeze. A massive dark sphere hung in space before them, surrounded by a glowing disk of superheated gas. Matter spiraled into the darkness like water, going down a drain, but this drain led to nowhere. "Is that what I think it is?" Danny asked. "A black hole," Lisa whispered, "and we're caught in its gravity well." Jake stared at the impossible sight. Black holes weren't supposed to exist in this part of space. The official charts showed nothing but empty space in the Kepler 442 system. "How close are we?" he asked. Nick checked his readings twice before answering. "Approximately 2 million kilometers from the event horizon. We are already inside the outer gravity field. Can we break free with our engines?" Lisa was already running calculations on her tablet. Her face grew more worried with each number. Not at full power. We'd need at least twice our current engine output to escape the gravity pull. What about the prisoners? Danny asked. Are they secure? Jake had almost forgotten about their cargo. Check all containment systems. Make sure every cell is locked. Down tight. As Danny worked his security console, Jake tried to think. 2 million kilometers sounded like a safe distance, but he knew that black holes could pull in objects from much farther away. The ship was already caught, and their engines weren't strong enough to break free. Captain, Nick said, I'm detecting something else. There's an artificial structure about 50,000 kilometers from our position. The main screen shifted to show a strange metallic station orbiting safely outside the black hole's pull. It was unlike any human design Jake had ever seen, with flowing curves and strange geometric patterns. Are you getting any signals from it? Jake asked. Scanning now, Nick replied. Yes, sir. Multiple communication arrays are active. The design doesn't match any known human technology. Jake felt his heart sink even further. An alien station meant they were being watched. Whatever happened next would be observed and probably recorded by beings who might not care whether humans lived or died. Try to contact them, Jake ordered. Maybe they can help us. Already trying, Captain. No response on any frequency. Lisa looked up from her calculations. Captain, I hate to make this worse, but we have another problem. The gravitational forces are slowly pulling us closer to the black hole. At our current rate, we'll cross the event horizon in approximately 18 hours. 18 hours, Jake repeated. That wasn't enough time to fix their engines or find another solution. He looked around the bridge at his crew, good people who trusted him to keep them safe. And below them were 847 prisoners who, whatever their crimes, didn't deserve to die like this. Options, he said simply. The escape pods, Danny suggested. We could evacuate the crew. That leaves the prisoners to die, Jake replied. And the pods don't have enough range to reach the nearest system. We could try to boost engine power, Lisa said. Strip non-essential systems, reroute everything to the main drives. Would that be enough? Lisa shook her head. Maybe 20% more power, still not enough to break free. Jake walked to the view screen and stared at the black hole. The glowing disk around it was beautiful in a terrifying way. Matter heating up to millions of degrees as it fell toward the point of no return. Soon the redemption would join that spiral dance. There has to be something, he said quietly. Behind him, his crew continued working, searching for solutions that might not exist. The alien station watched silently from its safe distance, and in the secure decks below, 847 prisoners had no idea that their transport ship was caught in one of the universe's most deadly traps. The red warning lights continued to flash as the HSV Redemption slowly fell toward the darkness, carrying all aboard into what seemed like certain death. Jake had commanded ships for 15 years, but he had never faced anything like this. The black hole pulled them forward with patient, unstoppable force. Time was running out. The ship groaned as invisible forces pressed against its hull. Captain Jake Morrison felt the deck plates vibrate under his feet as the Redemption fought against the black hole's pull. 3 hours had passed since they discovered their situation, and things were getting worse. Gravity field strength is increasing, Lisa Carter reported from her engineering station. Hull stress is at 60% of maximum tolerance. Jake watched the numbers on his screen climb steadily upward. The ship was built tough, but no vessel could withstand the crushing forces of a black hole indefinitely. He needed solutions, not just status reports. What about the prisoners? He asked Danny Walsh. The security chief looked uncomfortable. Still secure, but they're asking questions. Word is spreading that something's wrong. The artificial gravity fluctuations in their sections are getting worse. Jake nodded. He had expected this. Prisoners were often more sensitive to changes in their environment than regular crew members. They had to be, to survive in the harsh world of incarceration. Sir, Nick Rodriguez called from the navigation console. I'm getting more detailed scans of that alien station. They have some very advanced technology. Their energy readings are off the charts. Any response to our communications? Nothing, Captain. But their sensors are definitely focused on us. They're watching everything we do. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Being observed by unknown aliens while his ship faced destruction was not how he had planned to spend his week. He wondered what these beings thought of humans. Did they see the Redemption's crew as primitive creatures stumbling toward their doom? Captain, Lisa said, her voice tight with worry. I need to show you something. Jake walked over to Lisa's station. The chief engineer had pulled up detailed structural diagrams of the ship. Red warning indicators flashed across multiple sections. The gravitational stress is affecting our artificial gravity generators, she explained. They're fighting against the external pull, but they're overheating. If they fail, everyone inside the ship will be thrown around like toys in a bag. How long do we have? Maybe 6 hours before the first generator burns out. After that, we'll lose them one by one. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. 6 hours until the artificial gravity failed. 18 hours until they crossed the event horizon. Either way, his ship and everyone on it would die. There has to be something we can do, he said. Some way to increase our engine power or change our trajectory. Captain, Danny said from his security station, what if we use the prisoners? Jake turned to stare at the security chief. What do you mean? I mean, some of these criminals have useful skills. We've got former engineers, pilots, even a few scientists. Maybe they know something we don't. You want me to release dangerous criminals while we're trapped in a death spiral around a black hole? Danny held up his hands. I'm not saying release, all of them. But some of the lower security prisoners might be willing to help if it means saving their own lives. Lisa looked up from her console. Actually, that's not completely crazy. I've been looking at the prisoner manifest. We have some people with advanced technical training. Jake considered the idea. It went against every regulation in the book. Prison transports kept their cargo secured at all times, but regulations were written for normal situations, and this was anything but normal. Show me the list, he said. Lisa pulled up the prisoner database on her screen. Dr. Helen Brooks, former quantum physicist, imprisoned for conducting illegal experiments that caused 12 deaths. Marcus Cole, former military engineer, convicted of sabotage. Amy Foster, former test pilot, convicted of smuggling. Carl Jenkins, former military strategist, convicted of treason. These people are criminals, Danny reminded them. They can't be trusted. They're also human beings who don't want to die, Jake replied. And right now we need all the help we can get. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Warning alarms began to sound as the hull stress readings climbed higher. Captain, Nick called out. I'm reading massive gravitational waves from the black hole. Something big just fell into it. On the main screen, they watched as debris from what might have been an asteroid glowed white-hot before disappearing into the darkness. The sight reminded everyone aboard of their own likely fate. Make the decision, Captain, Lisa said quietly. We're running out of time. Jake took a deep breath. Every instinct told him that releasing prisoners was dangerous and wrong. But every logical part of his mind said that conventional thinking had failed them. They needed unconventional solutions. Danny, bring up Dr. Helen Brooks first. I want to talk to her personally. Sir, are you sure about this? No, I'm not sure about anything, but I'd rather try something risky than just wait to die. Danny activated his security controls. I'll need to escort her to the bridge myself. Protocol requires full restraints and 2 guards. Do it. While Danny went to retrieve the prisoner, Jake tried to prepare himself for what he was about to do. He had read Dr. Brooks's file. She was brilliant, but her experiments had killed people. Could he trust someone like that with the lives of his crew? 15 minutes later, Danny returned with a woman in standard prison clothing. Dr. Helen. Brooks was in her mid-40s with graying hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her hands were cuffed in front of her, and her movements were careful and controlled. Dr. Brooks, Jake said, I'm Captain Morrison. I assume you know why you're here. The ship is caught in a gravitational field, she replied without hesitation. Probably a black hole based on the tidal stress patterns I can feel in the deck plating. You want my help because conventional physics says you're all going to die. Jake blinked in surprise. That's very observant. I'm a physicist, Captain. I notice things like space-time curvature and gravitational waves. The question is, are you desperate enough to listen to someone like me? What do you mean, someone like you? Dr. Brooks smiled sadly. I'm here because I pushed the boundaries of science too far. I tried experiments that the establishment said were impossible. 12 people died because I believed I could control forces beyond my understanding. And now? Now you're facing forces beyond anyone's understanding. Your engines can't generate enough power to escape. Your hull will eventually crack under the stress. In a few hours, everyone on this ship will be dead unless someone tries something impossible. Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was watching the prisoner with professional interest. Nick seemed nervous, but curious. Danny kept his hand near his weapon. What would you suggest? Jake asked. First, I need to see your engine specifications and current sensor readings. Then I need to talk to whoever sabotaged your navigation system. How did you know the navigation system was sabotaged? Because black holes don't just appear in empty space, Captain. Someone or something caused this ship to drop out of hyperspace at exactly the right location to be caught. Either it was an incredible accident or it was deliberate. Jake felt another chill. He had been so focused on escaping the black hole that he hadn't considered how they got there in the first place. Danny, check the security logs. I want to know if any prisoners accessed ship systems before we dropped out of hyperspace. As Danny worked, Dr. Brooks studied the main view screen. Her eyes traced the glowing accretion disk around the black hole with professional interest. Beautiful, she said quietly. And absolutely deadly. You know, Captain, there might be a way to use the black hole's rotation to our advantage, but it would require some very precise calculations and a lot of courage. Explain. Later. First, find out who sabotaged your ship. Because if we're going to attempt the impossible, I need to know if we're dealing with more sabotage. Danny looked up from his console, his face grim. Captain, the security logs show unauthorized access to the navigation system 6 hours ago. The access codes trace back to prisoner Marcus Cole. Jake clenched his fists. One of his prisoners had deliberately put them all in danger. But now that same prisoner might be their only hope of survival. The black hole continued to pull them, closer as the hull stress readings climbed toward the danger zone. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the secure holding area facing Marcus Cole, the man who had put them all in this deadly situation. Cole was a thin, nervous-looking man in his 30s with quick eyes and calloused hands from years of engineering work. His prison jumpsuit was wrinkled, and he kept looking around as if expecting trouble. You sabotaged our navigation system, Jake said without any greeting. Why? Marcus Cole shifted uncomfortably in his restraints. I didn't mean for this to happen, Captain. I was trying to delay the ship so I could escape during the next supply stop. You nearly killed everyone on board. I know that now, Cole said quietly. The navigation hack was supposed to create a minor malfunction, not drop us out of hyperspace into a black hole. I had no idea there was a gravitational anomaly in this region. Dr. Helen Brooks, who had been standing silently beside Danny Walsh, stepped forward. What exactly did you do to the navigation system? Cole looked at her suspiciously. Who are you? Someone who might be able to save your life, she replied. If you cooperate. Cole glanced at Captain Morrison, who nodded. I created a false sensor reading that would make the computer think we were off course. The idea was to trigger a course correction that would take us near the mining station at Beta Centauri. That's incredibly stupid, Dr. Brooks said bluntly. Navigation systems have multiple backup sensors specifically to prevent that kind of tampering. I overrode the backups too, Cole admitted. I'm good with computer systems. You're an idiot with computer systems, Dr. Brooks corrected. But we don't have time to discuss your poor life choices. Can you fix what you broke? Cole looked around the small holding area. Maybe, but I'd need access to the main computer core, and I'd need my hands free. Danny Walsh shook his head immediately. Absolutely not. He's already proven he can't be trusted. He's also the only one who understands exactly what went wrong, Dr. Brooks pointed out. Captain, we need him if we're going to have any chance of escape. Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him. Every decision he made now could mean the difference between life and death for everyone on the ship. Through the small window, in the holding area, he could see stars slowly rotating as the ship continued its spiral toward the black hole. "What's your plan, Dr. Brooks?" Jake asked. "It's theoretical at this point, but there might be a way to use the black hole's rotation to slingshot us back to normal space. The technique is called ergosphere extraction. In simple terms, please." Dr. Brooks moved to the small display screen in the holding area and began sketching diagrams with her finger. A rotating black hole drags space-time around with it. If we can position ourselves at exactly the right distance and angle, we can use that dragging effect to gain velocity. "That sounds like science fiction," Danny said. "All good science sounds like fiction until someone proves it works," Dr. Brooks replied. "The problem is that the maneuver requires precise navigation and perfect timing. We'd need to dive much closer to the black hole before we could attempt the escape." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Closer? We're already being pulled apart by the gravitational forces." "I know it sounds insane, Captain, but it's the only theoretical possibility I can think of. And to make it work, we'd need to modify the ship's quantum drive system." "Our quantum drive is damaged," Lisa Carter's voice came over the intercom. She had been listening to the conversation from the bridge. "The initial navigation malfunction caused a cascade failure in the quantum field generators." Dr. Brooks looked thoughtful. "That might actually work in our favor. A damaged quantum drive could be modified more easily than a working one." "Modified how?" Jake asked. "We'd need to overload the drive at the precise moment we pass through the ergosphere. The quantum field collapse would create a localized space-time distortion that we could surf back to normal space." Marcus Cole had been listening to the conversation with growing interest. "That's completely insane. You're talking about deliberately destroying our main propulsion system while we're already trapped in a black hole." "Do you have a better idea?" Dr. Brooks asked. Cole was quiet for a moment. "Actually, there might be something. When I was tampering with the navigation system, I noticed some unusual readings from the long-range sensors. There are other ships in this system." "Other ships?" Jake felt a spark of hope. "Not human ships," Cole continued. "The sensor signatures were completely different. But if there are other vessels here, maybe they know how to navigate safely around the black hole." Danny Walsh spoke up. "Captain, we've been trying to contact that alien station for hours. They're not responding to any of our signals." "Maybe we're not using the right frequency," Dr. Brooks suggested. "Or maybe they don't want to talk to us until we prove we're worth saving." Jake made a decision. "All right, we're going to try both approaches. Dr. Brooks, I want you to work with Lisa on the quantum drive modifications. Cole, you're going to help Nick figure out how to contact those other ships." "Captain," Danny protested, "you can't seriously be considering releasing both of these prisoners." "I can and I am. We're going to die anyway if we don't try something desperate." Jake led the group back to the bridge, where the situation had grown worse. The hull stress readings were now at 75%, and the artificial gravity was fluctuating badly. Several crew members were holding onto their stations to keep from being thrown around. "Status report," Jake ordered. "Getting worse by the hour," Lisa replied. "The gravitational field is intensifying as we get closer to the black hole. I estimate we have maybe 10 hours before hull breach." "And the prisoner situation?" "They know something's wrong," Danny reported. "We've had to deal with 3 separate incidents of prisoners trying to break out of their cells. They're scared." Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was exhausted and frightened. 2 dangerous criminals now stood among them, unrestrained and working at computer terminals. The alien station continued to watch them silently, and somewhere in the darkness ahead, the black hole waited patiently for its next meal. "Dr. Brooks, what do you need to start working on the quantum drive modifications?" "Access to the engineering section and a complete technical manual for the drive system. I also need to run some calculations on the black hole's rotation rate." "Lisa, give her whatever she needs." "Cole, work with Nick on the communication problem. I want to know what those aliens are thinking." As his crew and the prisoners began working on their desperate plans, Jake walked to the main view screen. The black hole looked bigger now, its accretion disk glowing brighter as more matter fell into it. He could see the point where light itself couldn't escape, a perfect circle of absolute darkness. "Captain," Nick called from his station. "I'm picking up some interesting readings from the alien station. They've increased their sensor activity significantly in the past hour." "What kind of readings?" "Gravitational wave detectors, quantum field analyzers, some kind of exotic particle." "Scanner. They're studying us very carefully." Marcus Cole looked up from the communication console. "Maybe they're waiting to see if we can solve the problem ourselves, like a test. Or maybe they're just curious to see how humans die," Danny muttered. Dr. Brooks had been working quietly at Lisa's engineering station, running calculations on her tablet. "Captain, I need to tell you something about this plan. Even if everything works perfectly, the chances of survival are very small." "How small?" "Maybe 1 in 1,000. And that's assuming we can execute the maneuver with perfect precision." Jake nodded. "What are our chances if we do nothing?" "0. "Then 1 in 1,000 sounds pretty good to me." The ship shuddered again as another gravitational wave passed through them. In the distance, the alien station continued its silent observation, recording everything for reasons only they understood. The black hole pulled them ever closer to the point of no return, but for the first time since the crisis began, Jake felt a small spark of hope. His crew and prisoners were working together toward a common goal. It might be impossible, but at least they were going to try. The HSV Redemption shook violently as it plunged deeper into the black hole's gravitational well. Captain Jake Morrison gripped the handrail beside his command chair as the deck tilted at an impossible angle. The artificial gravity systems were failing one by one, creating pockets of weightlessness throughout the ship. "Hull stress at 90%, Lisa Carter reported, her voice tight with fear. "We're running out of time." Through the main view screen, Jake could see that space itself looked wrong. The stars appeared stretched and twisted, bent by the immense gravity they were falling into. The black hole's accretion disk now filled most of their view, a swirling whirlpool of superheated gas that glowed like a deadly sunrise. "How long until we reach the point of no return?" Jake asked. Dr. Helen Brooks looked up from her calculations. "At our current rate of descent, maybe 2 hours until we cross the event horizon, but the ship will be torn apart long before that." "What about the modifications to the quantum drive?" "Almost finished," Lisa replied. "But I have to warn you, Captain. What we're about to do has never been attempted before. We're basically turning our main propulsion system into a bomb and hoping we can control the explosion." Marcus Cole had been working frantically at the communication station with Nick Rodriguez. "Captain, I think I've found something. The alien station is definitely trying to communicate with us, but not through normal radio frequencies." "What kind of communication?" "Gravitational waves. They're sending patterns in the space-time distortions around their station. It's like they're speaking in the language of gravity itself." Jake walked over to examine Nick's displays. The readings showed complex wave patterns that seemed to repeat every few minutes. "Can you understand what they're saying?" "Not the content, but the structure suggests they're asking questions. My best guess is they want to know if we understand the nature of our situation." "Send back a simple mathematical sequence," Dr. Brooks suggested. "Something that shows intelligence but doesn't require advanced physics knowledge." As Nick worked on composing a reply, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Danny Walsh's voice came over the intercom from the security station. "Captain, we have a problem in the prisoner sections. The gravity failures are causing riots. Some of the security barriers have been damaged." Jake closed his eyes. The last thing they needed was a prison break while they were trying to escape from a black hole. "How many prisoners are involved?" "At least 50 so far, and the number is growing. They're scared and angry and they don't understand what's happening." "Can you contain them?" "Not with the artificial gravity failing and half my security systems offline. I need help." Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was already stretched thin trying to implement their desperate escape plan, but without the prisoners secured, chaos would spread throughout the ship. Dr. Brooks, how critical is your presence for the final phase of the plan? I need to be here to coordinate the quantum field collapse, but that won't happen for another hour. Cole, the same question. Marcus Cole hesitated. The communication work is mostly automated now. I could spare some time. Jake made a quick decision. Both of you go with Danny. Help calm the prisoners. Explain what's happening and what we're trying to do. They have a right to know. Captain, Danny protested over the intercom. Sending prisoners to talk to other prisoners is against every protocol. Danny, we threw protocol out the window when we decided to modify our quantum drive while falling into a black hole. Just do it. As Dr. Brooks and Marcus Cole left the bridge, Jake turned his attention back to the escape plan. The ship was now so deep in the black hole's gravity well that even light was having trouble escaping. The outside universe appeared to slow down and freeze as time dilation effects became stronger. Nick, any response from the aliens? Yes, sir. They sent back a more complex mathematical pattern. I think they're satisfied that we're intelligent. Now they're transmitting what looks like technical data. What kind of technical data? I'm not sure. The information is encoded in gravitational wave fluctuations. It's beyond anything I've ever seen. Lisa looked up from her engineering console. Captain, I think they might be trying to help us. Some of these wave patterns match the quantum field equations Dr. Brooks has been working with. Jake felt a spark of hope. Maybe the alien observers weren't just watching them die. Maybe they were actually trying to save them. Lisa, coordinate with Nick to decode as much of that data as possible. It might give us an edge. 15 minutes. Later, Dr. Brooks returned to the bridge with Marcus Cole and Danny Walsh. All three looked exhausted but relieved. How did it go? Jake asked. Better than expected, Dr. Brooks replied. Once we explained the situation, most of the prisoners volunteered to help. They're securing loose equipment and helping with emergency repairs. Some of them have useful skills, Cole added. There's a former pilot named Amy Foster who knows advanced flight maneuvers, and a military strategist called Carl Jenkins who's been analyzing our tactical situation. Tactical situation? He thinks the alien station's position isn't random, Danny explained. They're positioned at exactly the right distance to observe us safely, but also close enough to potentially offer assistance. Jake nodded. Speaking of assistance, the aliens have been sending us technical data through gravitational waves. Dr. Brooks immediately went to Nick's station to examine the decoded information. Her eyes widened as she read through the complex equations and diagrams. This is incredible, she said quietly. They're showing us how to create a stable quantum bubble during the ergosphere extraction. This could actually work. What's the catch? Jake asked. He had learned that in desperate situations, anything that sounded too good to be true usually was. The maneuver requires someone to manually adjust the quantum field generators during the escape sequence. It's a one-way trip to the generator room. The radiation levels will be lethal within minutes. Jake felt his heart sink. Their plan required a suicide mission. Someone would have to sacrifice themselves to save the others. How manually are we talking about? Real-time adjustments. To keep the quantum field stable as we pass through the ergosphere, the person would need to monitor multiple systems simultaneously and make split-second decisions based on sensor readings. Could it be done remotely? Not with our current damage to the internal communication systems. The radiation from the black hole is interfering with our electronics. Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was listening to every word, understanding the implications. Someone among them would have to die to give the others a chance at escape. I'll do it, Lisa said immediately. I know the quantum drive systems better than anyone. No, Jake replied. I'm the captain. It's my responsibility. Actually, Marcus Cole said quietly, it should be me. Everyone turned to look at him. The former military engineer stood straighter than Jake had seen him since this crisis began. This whole situation is my fault, Cole continued. If I hadn't sabotaged the navigation system, we wouldn't be here. Let me make up for what I did. You don't have the technical knowledge, Dr. Brooks pointed out. Then teach me. We have maybe an hour before the final phase begins. I'm good with systems, and I learn fast. Jake studied Marcus Cole's face. The man looked different now, more determined and less afraid. Maybe facing death had changed him, or maybe he had finally found a way to redeem himself. Are you sure about this? Jake asked. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. As the ship continued its controlled fall toward the black hole's ergosphere, Jake watched his crew and the reformed prisoner work together to prepare for their impossible escape. Attempt. The alien station continued to transmit helpful data, as if encouraging their efforts. The hull stress readings climbed past the critical threshold, but somehow the ship held together. In the distance, the event horizon waited like a doorway to nowhere, but for the first time, Jake believed they might actually avoid stepping through it. The HSV Redemption plunged toward the ergosphere, the invisible boundary where space-time itself was dragged around the spinning black hole. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the final preparations for their desperate escape attempt. The ship groaned and twisted as gravitational forces pulled different sections in different directions. Quantum drive modifications complete, Lisa Carter reported. All systems are ready for the field collapse sequence. Marcus Cole had spent the last hour learning every detail of the quantum field generators. Dr. Helen Brooks had taught him everything she could about the delicate adjustments he would need to make. Now he stood at the engineering station, his face pale but determined. I'm ready, Captain, he said simply. Jake nodded. Through the view screen he could see that normal space looked frozen in time. The stars appeared motionless as extreme time dilation took effect. Only the glowing accretion disk continued to move, spiraling endlessly toward the event horizon. Amy Foster is in position at the auxiliary helm, Danny Walsh reported. She says she understands the flight path Dr. Brooks calculated. Amy Foster was one of the prisoners who had volunteered to help. Her experience as a test pilot made her the best choice to execute the complex maneuvers required for the escape. She sat at the backup flight controls, her hands steady despite the impossible situation. All prisoners are secured in reinforced sections, Danny continued. Those who stayed to help are strapped into emergency stations. Jake looked around the bridge one last time. His crew had performed magnificently under pressure. The prisoners had surprised him with their willingness to cooperate. Even the alien observers seemed to be encouraging their efforts by sending more technical data through gravitational waves. Dr. Brooks, confirm our position relative to the ergosphere. We're approaching the boundary now, she replied, studying her instruments. In exactly 3 minutes, we'll enter the region where space-time is being dragged around the black hole. That's when Marcus needs to trigger the quantum field collapse. Nick, what's our communication status with the alien? Station! They're still transmitting support data, Captain. I think they want us to succeed. Jake took a deep breath. All right, everyone, this is it. Marcus, get down to the generator room. The rest of us will monitor from here and pray this works. Marcus, Cole stood up from his station. He looked around the bridge at the people who had become his unlikely allies in this fight for survival. Captain, he said, tell my family that I tried to make things right at the end. You can tell them yourself when we get out of this, Jake replied. Marcus smiled sadly and headed for the exit. Everyone on the bridge knew it was the last time they would see him alive. Entering the ergosphere in 60 seconds, Dr. Brooks announced. Jake could feel the ship beginning to accelerate as the dragging effect of twisted space-time took hold. The sensation was like being caught in a cosmic whirlpool, but one made of gravity instead of water. Amy, are you ready for the flight sequence? Yes, sir, Amy Foster replied from the auxiliary helm. I've got the course locked in. It's going to be a rough ride. Marcus, report your status. Marcus Cole's voice came over the intercom from the quantum generator room. I'm in position, Captain. The radiation levels are already pretty high down here, but the equipment is responding normally. Beginning ergosphere entry sequence, Dr. Brooks announced. Gravitational field strength is increasing exponentially. The ship began to spin as invisible forces grabbed hold of it. Through the view screen, Jake watched the universe rotate around them. The black hole's accretion disk became a blur of light as they were swept along by the rotation of space-time itself. "Now, Marcus," Dr. Brooks shouted. "Collapse the quantum field now." "Field collapse initiated," Marcus reported. His voice was already strained from the radiation exposure. Suddenly, the redemption was surrounded by a bubble of twisted space-time. The quantum field generators screamed as they overloaded, creating a localized distortion in the fabric of reality. The ship rode this distortion like a surfer on a wave of gravity. "It's working," Lisa shouted. "We're gaining velocity." But the maneuver was far from over. The ship tumbled chaotically through the ergosphere as Amy Foster fought to keep them on course. Warning alarms blared as hull stress reached levels that should have torn the vessel apart. "Marcus, I need constant adjustments to the field strength," Dr. Brooks called over the intercom. "The quantum bubble is starting to destabilize." "I'm on it," Marcus replied, though his voice was getting weaker. "Field generators 2 and 5 are overheating, compensating with manual adjustments." Jake gripped his command chair as the ship rolled and pitched through impossible angles. The artificial gravity had completely failed now, and only their safety restraints kept the crew in place. "Amy, how are we doing on the flight path?" "Still on course, Captain, but barely. The gravitational currents are stronger than we calculated." Through the chaos, Jake could see the alien station in the distance. It had moved to a new position, as if trying to get a better view of their escape attempt. He wondered what the alien scientists were thinking as they watched humans attempt something that should have been impossible. "Dr. Brooks, how much longer? Do we need to maintain the quantum field?" 30 more seconds to clear the ergosphere. Then we should be free." "Marcus, can you hold on that long?" There was a pause before Marcus answered, and when he did, his voice was barely a whisper. "Field generators are at maximum output. I'm making the final adjustments now." The ship suddenly lurched as they hit the boundary of the ergosphere. For a moment, Jake thought they might be torn apart by the competing gravitational forces. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing, the redemption burst free from the black hole's grip. The quantum field collapsed completely, and the ship tumbled through normal space. The stars stopped their impossible rotation and returned to their proper positions. The black hole fell behind them, no longer an immediate threat. "We're free," Nick shouted. "We're actually free." But their celebration was cut short by the silence. From the quantum generator room, "Marcus, report," Jake called over the intercom. No response. "Marcus, please respond." Still nothing. Danny Walsh immediately headed for the generator room with a medical team. Jake knew what they would find, but he had to hope that somehow Marcus had survived the lethal radiation exposure. 20 minutes later, Danny returned to the bridge. His expression told Jake everything he needed to know. "He's gone, Captain, but he died at his post." The final field adjustments were perfect. Jake closed his eyes and said a silent prayer for Marcus Cole, a man who had redeemed himself in the most dramatic way possible. "Captain," Nick called from his station, "I'm receiving a signal from the alien station." "What kind of signal?" "It's different from before, more complex. I think it might be a congratulations." Dr. Brooks was studying the sensor readings of their escape. "Captain, what we just did should have been impossible according to every law of physics I know. The fact that it worked suggests that human determination can overcome mathematical certainty." "Or maybe we just got incredibly lucky," Jake replied. "Maybe. But I don't think the aliens see it that way. Look at their station positioning." Jake looked at the main screen. The alien station had moved again, this time to a position that seemed almost like a salute. Other sensor contacts were appearing throughout the system as more alien vessels arrived to observe the aftermath. "I think we just proved something to them," Dr. Brooks continued. "Something about human nature that they found worthy of respect." As the HSV redemption limped toward the edge of the system, Jake reflected on what they had accomplished. His crew had worked miracles under pressure. The prisoners had chosen cooperation over chaos, and Marcus Cole had found redemption in sacrifice. Behind them, the black hole continued its eternal dance, patient and deadly. But for the first time in cosmic history, a ship had fallen past the point of no return and lived to tell about it. Sure, alien observers would study this event for generations, trying to understand how a species could unite in crisis and achieve the impossible through stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The universe had learned something new about humanity that day.